Welcome to the first interview of the Recipes for Resilience series. And this is a sort of a continuation for the blogs where I talk about burnout, the different stages of burnout. And I believe almost everyone is experiencing chronic stress or some level of burnout. And then we are now shifting towards the solutions or the practices, how to be more resilient and how to avoid burnout. And my guest today is Jayne Bullen. She's the Managing Director of the Nutrition Network and the COO of the Noakes Foundation. Welcome, Jayne.
Thank you. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And myself, I'm Pauliina Mapatha. I'm a career wellness and positive mindset or positive intelligence coach. And I'm on the mission to help professionals and organizations in change, transformation, and wellness. All right. So, you know, it's just recently that South Africa was marking the 365 days under lockdown. So obviously, I just want to mention this context in case somebody's looking at this interview later on. So we will be talking about work-life balance and walking the talk as a leader, and it's part of the resilience continuum. But now the pandemic is bringing an extra flavor. So, Jayne, how do you define what is resilience for you?
So I think it's changed in the last year. So if you'd asked me this a year ago, I would have said a lot of the things that come up on Wikipedia when you look at resilience and when you Google it, and it's about bouncing back and it's about being tough. But I honestly think that resilient at the moment is about getting through every day, keeping yourself in check, keeping your health in line, keeping your family together. So it's shifted for me. I think it used to be very much about always winning and kind of getting through big goals. And right now it's about keeping things together, keeping it small, keeping things tight, keeping things going. So it is about bouncing back, but it's taken on a different nuance since COVID. And I think certainly all the women I know and the mothers that I know feel the same way or have had some similar experience of how they've had to adjust their understanding of resilience and success.
Yeah.
And that comes with fragility. You know, it comes with being fragile, acknowledging that we aren't always resilient, that we need support. So it's a big topic. It's a beautiful topic. So thank you for inviting the process around it.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree. And the dictionary definition, bouncing back, maybe is a problematic, because why should we bounce back? Why don't we keep in a good balance all the time? Exactly. And actually, I think for me, the three key elements for living a balanced and a resilient life is to live in a good alignment with your values. And if it's a workplace resilience, then obviously we look at, somehow you are in the right place, that it's in alignment with yourself. But also now that we work from home and all that, so it's just, I mean, if you are having a family and you need to care for your family or help with the homeschooling or whatever it is, it still has to be in alignment with you for you to have that good balance. And then self-care. And self-care, I'm not talking about the massages or those are also part of it, but it's the deeper work and the back to basics that you can get actually a meal to the table every day, and preferably a healthy meal. And what the other one is obviously social relationships, the communication, and that to have good and trusted relationships. So if we talk resilience at the workplace, obviously it's important to get along with your colleagues, with your boss and all that, but also now even in the socially, in your life in general. And now that everything is piled up in wherever you're working from, if you're working from home, so they are really, you can't really separate these two things in the same way than maybe before.
That's the complexity of it. And it's actually, I saw a quote today that I wanted to share in this interview because it really touched on, it doesn't talk about true resilience, but it's something that it doesn't have a citation. So I can't say who it's from, but it says, "This, my dear, is the greatest challenge of being alive in our times. It's to witness the injustice of the world and not allow it to consume our light." And I think that really touches on what it means to be resilient right now, for me, certainly, because it's so much about staying in alignment with our life purpose and our passion. Certainly the work that I and we do at the Noakes Foundation and the Nutrition Network, and to keep holding that candle of vision and light around the work that we're doing and our purpose in the world in such dark times has become a benchmark of resilience for me, I think, because it's what keeps me going. It's what keeps us pushing the bar, wanting to do more, wanting to contribute, because we know and we see the work that we're doing in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I think that's become an important piece of resilience for me, is knowing why I'm doing the work that I do, knowing what, seeing the bigger picture and being clear on my why.
Yeah, because it's so easy to would be just let it go and get into this thinking about all the challenges and what
and
we
that's
have.
actually that's a good place maybe to start, is to think, okay, well, what is the opposite of resilience? Well, it's like collapse, giving up, completely letting it all go, which are all things that I certainly have felt. I think we've all felt tempted at various points and have done at some stages as well of the lockdowns and in COVID, is like that absolute kind of inertia. But if you're clear on the work that you're doing and its value in the world, you have to become resilient in order to meet the challenges.
Yeah,
and to keep
though research says that people who are extremely passionate about their work and really committed, sometimes that can also cause burnout because they put everything into that.
Absolutely.
And I think, like yourself, you are heading sort of 2 social enterprises which are for common good, and like so many organizations, having a sort of a smaller teams. You're not in these companies that have hundreds and hundreds of employees or thousands, and each and every department handles different things. And from my point of view, it looks like you've got a quite committed team, and everybody's quite, at least the people that I engage or I see, are really putting their heart and soul into the work, and they probably have a big why. Then how do you, anyway, before we go there, but the people who are in this kind of they have altruistic why, making the world a better place in one way or another. They often also put anything and everything before themselves. That's what I see also with my clients from the socioeconomic sector, or entrepreneurs, or people who are living on their passion, and then they just start enduring, and they don't recharge in between. And this is another coach, her name is Sunday Bean. She talks about depleting batteries, that if you are enduring and persevering, you end up depleting your batteries. And instead, for you to be resilient, you should rejuvenate, like on daily basis, or maybe every hour you need a sort of a 2-minute break or 5-minute break, just to recharge.
Yeah, I think that is a big thing, certainly in the NGO game and in the sort of in work that has a bigger picture. So it was certainly a lot easier for me when I worked in a corporate and went into the office and left all of my woes, and it didn't matter that much to me because I didn't see the impact of the work that I was doing in the world. So I would kind of on the weekend switch off. I never, even checked in on work most weekends unless there was a big project on. I had a much clearer sense of this is work and this is life.
Also clear boundaries, very clear boundaries, work and my other life. Yeah.
So when it's something that comes together, which is most people's passion is, so most people dream of that opportunity and finding that step towards actually integrating what they love, which is the whole Ikigai principle, what they love and what the world needs and what they want to be doing, what they're good at, into one thing. Suddenly you're in a position where it's all of your life's touched by it.
Yeah.
So particularly in the food game, it's working in food and in nutrition is a particularly heated, emotive area as well, because everything that you do ties into the work that you do. Every meal that you make, every time you go to a shop, every time you feed your child, you be very, very aware of how this ties into the work, how important it is to be in alignment. When you're stepping out of alignment, you're much more aware of it. There's so many factors. So it ties into resilience because, again, you've got to find a very, very strong toolkit. And you have to, if your team doesn't have it, so you've got to find ways to get them a strong toolkit fast. Otherwise, they're not going to make it. They're not going to survive. They're not going to cope with the complexity and stresses.
Yeah.
So it's a big job.
I'm sure it is. But let's go there. I'm in my in the burnout block. I'm sort of challenging leaders to say, are you walking the talk, or how do you show good example? So how do you? You mentioned that in your previous work it was easier. So what are your own strategies to manage like work-life balance and your own resilience?
So I work very hard and I'm very passionate. So I have to have a lot of strategies in place. Like I have to work extremely hard at finding that balance. So part of it is every single day, there's certain practices that I'm committed to. So that's time in nature, meditation and exercise and healthy eating and really good supplements. The list goes on, but those are my kind of absolute 5 basic ones. And then sleep, of course, is an essential. And I make sure that I take quality leave and holidays. So I take a long break once a year. I go on a silent retreat once a year where I have absolutely no devices with me. And I'm really clear when I'm taking time off with my team and with my peers and with my, people that I work with, that I'm going to be not working over that time. And yes, obviously there are times where that doesn't work. When you're in a leadership position and decisions have to be made, there are crises. But above that, we have a really strong sense of mutual respect for each other in our team, and we cover for each other. And we do it for each other. So at the moment, one of our fabulous team members is away for 4 weeks in Mozambique on a holiday, and we haven't spoken to her once, and it's been extremely difficult. But we've set that boundary, and we are not going to contact her unless the sky falls in, which it doesn't. There's always a way to work together and to support each other to have rest. So it's about taking the leave, actually, and having to, a couple of my team members as well, I won't mention names, I've had to really push them and say, you're going to have to take a break. You can't work this hard. We all love our jobs, particularly at the Nutrition Network. We work long hours. We love our jobs. We love the people we work with, but we have to find that balance. And it's essential to kind of build it in.
Yeah. I love when you're... applies
there? So another aspect of that, of course, is being a mother, which I am, which a lot of them, we're an almost all woman team. We're all parents in our team. Certainly on the board level, we all have kids, small kids, old kids. Parenting matters. And I think part of the old model has been very much about ignoring your child and having childcare. And at one point when my son was a baby, I was on a board of a large media company, and I was the only woman on the executive committee. And we used to have these 3-day board meetings out of town, and my son was a baby, and I was like ignoring him and not bringing him into the reality of my job. But that's not okay. That's not a healthy system. So it's about making sure that people are people.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe something that the pandemic is slowly teaching organizations to. At least there's research done. And shown that in the beginning, many companies or organizations, employers did not recognize, set the boundaries on the working time or understanding and supporting people with all the additional changes that we're going through. But I love the thing that as much as you are working with the nutrition and health, and it's a lot about the physical health, exercise and all that, and what do you eat and supplements and all that. But you also mentioned like things, walking in nature or yoga or things that are sort of spiritual in nature and or like connecting to your soul too. Or is it for you, or is it exercise?
So for me, it's about that, but I'm not going to say that it's like that for all of the team. I mean, there's a couple of people that are marathon runners, and Prof Noakes is into his CrossFit at the moment. So it's about figuring out what your medicine is, and that's where, again, on a team level, it's about meeting people where they're at. I'm not going to force people to go for mandatory meditation classes when that's not their medicine. It's about meeting people who, as they are, figuring out what it is that and that's why when I interview people, I always ask them what they do for stress. It's like an absolute standard question in an interview. And it's astounding how difficult it is for people to answer that question. It's like they don't actually know how they cope with stress and what they do to alleviate it. And those are things that if you're in a stressful environment, especially on a small team, you absolutely have to know what that is. And you have to communicate that up to your, the people that are pushing you, and say to them, I haven't fitted in my cycle for the last week and I'm not coping. And, I need a mental health day, or I need a day off, or I need a break. Those are things that human beings need to flourish, survive.
Yeah.
So one thing.
Yeah. So how do you?
Okay,
yeah. So how do you go about then as a leader? So you ask these kind of questions, and have you put up some sort of specific processes or systems in place, or how do you in your organizations, how do you?
So we have flat policies, and I was actually sitting next to a very good friend who's a very successful managing director of a large travel agency last weekend at a lunch, and she was challenging me on our lack of solid HR policies. And I was saying to her, we've never needed them. No one's actually ever left. So bizarrely enough, I've been leading the organization for 6 years. And one of the big crises that we have with talent in South Africa and in most countries is that they're very hard to retain. So it's hard to keep good people. We've never lost a person. People have been worked out of the organization that haven't been the right fit, but no one has ever wanted to leave. So that's a huge positive in the way that we do things. And what it's about, and what it's always been about for me, is just finding the human being that you're working with and meeting them and empowering them with trust to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So it's got to the point now where we try not to have rigid leave structures and rigid policies. We've always worked from home. So COVID didn't change a lot for us. Most of the team preferred to work from home because they were moms and they wanted to do the odd school lift. They worked better. There were a couple of people on the team that didn't. So we did have both. We had the option for both, and we never pushed people in one direction or the other. So if somebody wants to work at home and they're better at it, or they're an introvert and that suits their job, they should never have been forced into an office environment. It was always wrong in the first place to try and mold people into a structure and into a very corporate environment that doesn't fit them. People flourish where they are trusted and where they are met where they're at, where they're allowed to be themselves. And for a lot of people, that's not an office environment, unfortunately. For most good people, it's not.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think trust, first of all, the importance of trust, and to build that trust. Trust is not just automatic. You need to build it and you need to maintain it. And should it be broken or something, it takes a super effort to regain it. And yeah, so this is actually quite interesting indeed. So your organizations were actually well positioned for the change, how the work life changed due to the pandemic, meaning working through our Zoom and whatever, Google and all, whatever, I don't know what are your different technologies, but that you were used to that way of working.
We were to some extent unaffected. We absolutely missed seeing each other and hanging out and coming together in the office space that we did have, which was very much to connect and to be social and for meetings. So we lost that, but other than that, it really hasn't changed much for us.
Yeah.
We've carried on. It hasn't changed the environment.
But you used to come together, and so you had that kind of human connection, even physical.
We hugged and chatted and laughed and cried and did all of those things. And now we do them on Zoom, and kind of more recently, a little, now that we've got a little gap with COVID, we do them in picnics and outdoors occasionally, but it's not the same. But beyond that, it hasn't affected our work.
Yeah.
And that's really amazing. We're really lucky that we were so geared. Of course, it's particularly Nutrition Network is an e-learning platform.
Yeah.
So we were always online. We work with the US and other time zones, so we always had to be geared towards that. But it's where the world's been going for so long, and where there's been a huge amount of resistance to it going. So I've seen that for years, and for decades, even in my time in Europe, it was like people wanted to work from home because of the commute and the travel problems. I was living in London at the time of the bombs in 2007, and it took me 3 weeks to get back to the office. And it was like dysfunctional the way that people weren't able to be mobile. And we were kind of gearing towards that. And a lot of the sort of big Alexander Forbes type places were trying to pretend to be more like that, and moving to those kinds of hot desks and those kinds of environment. But what we saw was that everyone just worked harder to some extent, and didn't actually adopt a new way of doing things. So what I know for sure is that there are some people that need a structured 8 to 12-hour day. And there's some people that can work 4 or 5 hours a day and their output can be extremely high. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I would never want one of my staff that's a mom to have to phone me if their child's sick and they're going to the doctor for a few hours during a work day. You know, I mean, it's like they've got to do that without feeling like they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And I believe that's part of being resilient in an organization, is that your team becomes resilient.
Yeah. And autonomous, giving them more autonomy and focus on the actual outcomes and outputs of the work, the quality of work, instead of time management.
Instead of time punching in, punching out. So my first job was at a factory, and we used to have to punch in and be at our desk with our coffee by 7:45 in the morning, and someone would come around and check.
Yeah.
And it was so hectic because your day started like a regiment. It was like being in prison. It was the opposite of creativity. And innovation. So
times are changing, and and there is maybe even a good things for online platforms. Maybe, you know, the uptake is better now because everybody is sort of forced to embrace digital ways of learning and doing things. What I wanted to check though, have you, because this pandemic and like right now in South Africa, we are still sort of in between the second and third wave, and not in a bad situation right now, though we see that maybe the third wave is just around the corner. So have you seen like some effect, or did you need to introduce some more robust strategies as a leader to support your staff, or their work-life balance, or their resilience and their well-being?
Yes, so definitely. I mean, what we had to do straight up front was we had to all talk about what our needs were and get really clear on what we could do. So at the very beginning of COVID, I said to everyone, we're going to keep our jobs if we all put in the time and really work on this. But if you want to take the time off, you can, like, let us know, do what you want, find a way that works for you. And absolutely throughout, we've offered kind of coaching, support that if anyone's needed it, flexibility. A lot of the team are moms and have suddenly hit, you know, as we discussed earlier, have suddenly got work at home with the kids. So they've had to change the way they work, different hours, different structures. It's been incredible because it's actually supported people to do their best. And what we found is that we've actually overachieved. So now we're in the position where we've all worked too much. We've put in too much of our time. We've got a great growth curve that we've hit because of it, because we all decided that we wanted to succeed. We understood, okay, we were supported by the comorbidities of COVID. So it's been really, we've been kind of supported to do our work better and harder because we've seen all the things that we've been kind of preaching about, how to treat, you know, diabetes and disease and obesity and comorbidities have all come into play since COVID. So it's overtly exemplified the work that we're doing. So we haven't had to, people that come and do this work are particularly passionate about what they're doing. So we're in a very lucky spot where we have a team that just believes in the work and wants to do it and knows the value in the world.
So am I am I hearing right that actually even financial bottom line was better?
Yes.
Congratulations. And because it's well, there are certain industries that have found their niche and have been able to pivot and all that. And yes, your niche, indeed, the comorbidities and the role of nutrition to managing these conditions is
but can I also add to that? So yeah, we followed those strategies with our staff, but what we also did was we took our customers into mind during COVID. And what we created as a business for the first time were 3 new courses that were for free to healthcare workers. We also offered our actual professional trainings for free to nurses. So we had, I think it was several hundred nurses around the world that did the training for free. So we really kind of went, how can we do better? How can we help people get through this? People that were stuck at home, people that were on COVID leave, we offered huge discounts for them to be able to do their CPD points for our trainings. So it was really about caring for each other. And what I saw was that some businesses didn't put people first. And they just kind of retrenched people and cut costs and took people's salaries down. And there was a choice at that point when COVID struck, where you had to actually sit in front of this pandemic and look it in the eye and go, am I going to run in fear and hide under my blanket for the next year and lock myself and my business down and my staff and disable us? Or am I going to be resilient? And I'm not saying we went into it like fighting the pandemic, but we went in and said, we want to keep our jobs. We want our people that benefit from the work that we do to keep benefiting, because our work matters and what we do matters, and our families matter to us.
Yeah.
And that's what resilience is. It's going, this is so scary. We don't know what's going to happen in the world in the next months and years, but we're just going to keep going in the ways that we can and finding a way to do this, whatever it looks like. We're going to keep going.
And you certainly
Even
did.
if we don't bounce back, it's like we're going to come out of it different, maybe less bouncy than we were a year ago. So I certainly don't feel as bouncy and as sparkly as I did this time last year. It's been tough, it's been hard. And I think it has been for everyone. But how do we get through this? We keep going every day. We keep innovating. We keep being creative. We keep trusting each other to make the right decisions and trusting ourselves to find a creative way through. So resilience is actually creativity.
Yeah, I love that you are bringing your because isn't it, you are a business leader and you are bringing the vocabulary of marketing and of all these, when you are pivoting or you need to be agile. So it's creativity. And just to say, I just wanted to say, because I am a member of the Nutrition Network and I am following the platforms and we are collaborating and all that. So I could also see it, the passion of the team. And suddenly there was, indeed, you launched so many courses, also the new courses, the paid ones and those free ones. And then you've been just having this kind of interviews or webinars and really sharing the knowledge and trying to support people globally. Obviously the people in healthcare. Yeah, no, it's good. Well done. You must tell your team also that well done. Now, is this? I'm just wondering, because I love the way you are sort of vulnerable to say that it's not easy and sharing your own strategies and that they have to be daily practice and how you've approached this in your team or with your team. Is there maybe something that I haven't asked that you like, an aspect that we haven't touched or at all?
I've thought of something that I wanted to share, which was when we talked about self-care, is I have certain other things that I do that have become essential to my well-being. And they some of them are esoteric, like one of them is reflexology. And the thing that I found this last year was one creative thing that I could do with my hands. So I was reading a beautiful book. It's called Belonging, Remembering Ourselves Home by Tokapa Turner. It's one of my favorite books. And in it, she talks about the art of using our hands as human beings, how we've done it over the centuries and how we've lost now we use our hands on our computers. And at some point last year, I was collecting shells on the beach nearby, and I found a way to use these shells to start making art. And it is actually one of the tools that got me through the lockdown. Was I just found something I could do every day at the end of the workday or in a break to use my hands with that was off a screen. And that's become essential now to my ability to be resilient, is to just find those little gaps, even if it's just between the school lift, or if there's a tea break and I put a few shells onto a canvas. It's finding those moments of reconnection to things that aren't about the world, the suffering of the world, the terrible stuff that's going on out there, because there is so much of it. And it's like building a toolkit, and then supporting others and one's team to find ways to really step away from the computer and just find that sense of connection again, whatever it is for them. And I think we all do that.
I think that talks to really, touching the shells and feeling, and so that not to be in your mind only, but really to connect into your body and something bigger, that creativity and all that. Such a great tip to start a new hobby, whatever it is. Like
whatever it is, like whatever you liked as a child. I mean, I used to love collecting shells and doing things like that as a child. And it was almost like I had to find something simple. And I know a lot of people have done that. They've kind of gone back to really basic things, being at home, cooking. So a lot of our people that work with us have really got back into cooking and have made these huge transformations with their health in the last year. They've gone super healthy and they've done things differently. And some of us have binge eaten, some of us have gone super healthy with the cooking. It's like, whatever it's been for you, that's, how you're getting through it. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Certainly in South Africa, I think, because we had the very strict lockdown a year ago, in sort of when we started, and the restaurants and takeaways and everything was closed. So it was indeed that you need to even cook the other options.
Yes.
So something good.
For some of the time, we did a lot of cooking over that period. It was busy for,
So if you needed to just for the listeners, if you needed to share, like, what is your personal best resilience, work-life balance, resilience, whatever, stress management and coping strategy for yourself? And then what do you think, if there are other leaders or, people who have a lot of employees, team members, subordinates, whatever word we want to use, but that they are responsible of, what is your top 2 strategies for as an individual?
So as an individual, it's to breathe regularly and deeply, whenever triggered and whenever possible. And certainly for the organization and for myself, it's to remember the purpose of the work that you're doing. And that doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be changing the world or changing the systems or saving lives. It can also just be the school lift has a profoundly important purpose. It's like, what am I doing today? And what is the bigger picture? While I'm raising children, I'm bringing food on the table, I'm keeping it together because one of us has lost an income. There's so many things. There's so many levels of how we have to really reconnect to our purpose. And we've done that as an organization at the Nutrition Network. We've really remembered. COVID has helped us to remember why we do the work we do. We've always known, but it's really embodied it now because of the suffering that we've seen and comorbidity patterns, and also just how healthcare needs innovative, fun, modernized ways of learning and connecting again. And we offer that. So that's something that we do. We've got so many big things that we do, but reconnection and integration of people is a huge service to the world. And there's many ways that we can do. There's so many applications of how we can find our purposes again. And that's, of course, as a coach, that's the work that you do with your clients. So coaching is probably a good start if for those of us that are struggling with it, which many of us are, many people are. It's a difficult time.
And I know you launched a couple of different courses, and also like really the free courses about the nutrition and how it can low carb, high fat or ketogenic nutrition can help to manage those comorbidities. But now I know, because we're collaborating on it, that something is brewing for the healthcare professionals who are indeed in the front line and even more affected by the pandemic than maybe us others. would you like to tell a little bit more about what's coming up?
Yes. So we haven't, this is one of the most important projects that we've worked on since COVID, actually. Thank you for bringing it up. We haven't found the name for it yet. Maybe one of our viewers will think of the perfect name, but what it is what we realize is the absolute massive need for mental health care support for healthcare workers. So it's been identified, certainly in my local district in South Africa in the Western Cape, the government's put a massive budget aside to support psychiatric and mental health needs of healthcare workers that have been so dramatically affected by COVID. And we can't not touch on that. We work with nutrition, and we know that what we eat is what our brain eats. So of course, there's going to be an aspect of nutrition and how it supports mental health, but other areas too, around supporting and surviving grief, how to deal with trauma, how to move with pain that we're seeing in the world. At the recent World Nutrition Summit, we had a small section, which was one of my longtime teachers, Susanna Darling-Khan, who just shared a 15-minute meditation and recognition space for the incredible suffering and loss of life that healthcare and frontline workers have been exposed to in this last year. And it's such a big piece. So that's one that we're going to do. You're going to be giving, I think, at least one talk in that module, we hope, on one of your incredible coaching topics. And it's such a big thing that we want to build, but we've got so many other things we're building this year too. So, but this is one of the most important. So we're trying to fast track it.
Yeah.
So hopefully coming out by mid-year.
Yeah. So that will be, and then because there will be people who have maybe not been following Nutrition Network, who are watching this from a different point of view. If they get interested in your offerings and all that, so where can they find more information? And I'm going to share these things in the show notes also. Yeah. So
they should be able to find it through your page as one of our affiliates, and they can also drop a line to any one of us at the Nutrition Network, nutrition-network.org, and see what we're up to. Our focus is always on how nutrition can be used to support diverse chronic disease. So we look at things from obesity to diabetes to other chronic diseases, and a whole range of different topics within that. And we train coaches and advisors. So you're one of our advisors that's trained in how to apply a ketogenic diet to the treatment and the patients that you work with. Clients, not patients.
Yeah, yeah.
And they all have CPD points for the medical profession.
Yeah. So and also the network is so broad. The professionals and many of them, they have their profiles on your website. So wherever you are in the world, if you are interested, you might even find a Nutrition Network member just around the corner.
Yeah, that's the thing for those of you that actually are interested in just finding somebody to support you medically. It's a great place to go, because there are people like you and me that have really chosen alternative ways of dealing with medicine. So we go from sick care to healthcare in the work that we do. We take people go back to treating health instead of illness.
Yeah.
And that's a huge empowerment.
Dealing with the actual causes, dealing with the actual root causes, and not just with the symptoms. And indeed, nutrition and the positive mindset, whereby all this, your resilience, your work-life balance, your bigger purpose, you always talk about the why is so important. Thank you so much, Jayne. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about this different thing than what we usually talk about. We usually are very focused on our nutrition related things. So it was so lovely to hear a little bit more, on the backstage or there, behind the scenes, how your team has kept themselves going and providing the value that you do for all of us.
Thank you so much for such an inspiring topic. It's really food for thought.